I guess I'm live, huh? Well, welcome everybody to whatever this is, which I think after the last session we did with Mark Manson, we decided would be the name of this going forward. So whatever this is, about to begin. But this one actually I think is kind of special because my guest today is classic entrepreneur. Started a company with a handful of co-founders in a dorm room. Spent the next 10, 12 years building it up to being a more than $100 million consumer packaged goods business. I mean, it is a classic, I'll call it rags to riches story, complete with Shark Tank appearances, all kinds of ups and downs. So my guest today is Sean Riley, who is one of the co-founders of Dudewipes. Sean, welcome to whatever this is.
Whatever this is, I like the title. It seems like the old Seinfeld, like the show about nothing or something like that.
That's right. Well, I wasn't sure whether to call it an AMA or whether to call it a podcast, so I go. In fact, it has happened naturally. What last time we did, I go, well, welcome to whatever this is, and both of us are going, that's actually a great name for a show. So away we go. So. I mentioned before we got on the air that one of the things we have in common besides being entrepreneurs is that both of us have, I think, done more of these podcasts and interviews than you imagine is even possible. So I got good news and bad news for you. So the good news is I am not going to ask you, where did the idea come from? Or any of these things that you've probably told the story 1,000 times. That's the good news. The bad news is, and I apologize in advance, I am not going to refer to you as Chief Executive Dude, because that is just stupid. So I know it works for you, but that just drives me crazy, that stuff. Hope you can live with it.
Like the class stuff better, CEO.
Yeah, I know it's cut and dry, but there's so many of these people goes, I'm the chief happiness officer.
Yeah.
I'm the chief exercise officer. It goes,
right.
Yeah, give me a break. At least you're chief executive something. That's that counts.
There you go.
So Sean, even though this is going to be a little bit well worn, but I can't help it. You got to start us off and tell us what the hell is a dude wipe.
Yeah, what the hell is a dude wipe? Pretty simple. A dude wipe is a wipe for after the bathroom. So, instead of toilet paper or with toilet paper, use dude wipes. They get you a lot cleaner. They can flush down the toilet. And, we're extra large dude wipes and all different scents and fun stuff like that. So a lot of people are like, oh, it's just rebranded baby wipes. And it's not quite that. We're a little bit different. But again, it's a wipe. Everyone knows how to use wipes, and we're just creating different usage in a different category. So that's what we do. We're in the shit space. We're in the toilet paper space, selling wipes.
And the astounding thing is you're selling more than $100 million of those a year. Is that right?
Yeah. We'll probably be more than 200 this year when it's all said and done. So, yeah.
And still growing?
Still growing. Yeah. This year, which should be like a 50%, year over year growth year. So honestly, we've had this like fun thing lately where we're trying to design like some category design. What does the future look like? And the whole Netflix to streaming, how people cut the cord and they went from linear TV to Netflix. We're using that as one of the analogies from toilet paper to dude wipes. Like, you're going to look back in 10 and 20 years and kids are going to be like, I can't believe, people used to not be able to pause their show and, have all of this content on demand. And so it's like stuff that seems newer, when you fast forward a long time, it actually can kind of become the new standard. So that's what we're trying to do, like flip phone to iPhone, cable TV to streaming TV, toilet paper to dude wipes.
It's actually a fascinating thing, and there's a number of things which, in my opinion, really set apart what you're doing, and hopefully we can touch on those later. But that's one of them, which is this is a classic blue ocean kind of play here, where you basically didn't go, I've got a better toilet paper, and it's a bigger square or it's better perforation. You basically took a category which didn't exist and created it. I mean, that's what's really one of the most compelling things about this, which it may not, it's really hard to create a category, but if you do, it goes to show that it can be a $200 million brand in not too many years.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's, I don't know if we really knew that out the beginning. We knew we were trying to do something different and something we liked, but like as it expands, you begin to appreciate like the uniqueness of what you're doing. And that, like you said, it won't always be easy in the beginning versus moving into an established category and making a better coffee that's more organic, just kind of like riffing off of something versus like the whole, we're going to change you from this old thing to this new thing. And like that's kind of, I don't know, that's the stuff I like the best because it just feels like the most creative, the most unique endeavors.
Oh, it's the coolest. It's like you have this crazy idea, and all of a sudden, people are going, this actually works." And actually, it hadn't even occurred to me that, I had always. I think I was reading an interview, and it was from one of the larger, consumer packaged goods companies who was, of course, expanding into the space. And I think they were saying, what's wonderful about this is it doesn't cannibalize our existing paper product.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and I think what you're saying is, hey, I love that attitude because that just means that I'll cannibalize it for you.
Yeah, for sure. And like another analogy, like to your own history, is like not everybody cancels cable either, right? So like it is these consumers do both as they start to evolve, and so we see toilet paper being very flat or slightly declined, but we don't necessarily see a world where it doesn't exist either. So yeah, you got to be realistic too about like what consumers are going to do. So I think those people are right to look at it as complementary, but what they really lack is like being able to market it as better. Like this new thing is better. We can market it as better. They just have to be like, try this with that. They can't really market the fact that it's a better clean than the old stuff. And that's where we can
It's
play around with that. Okay.
it's a huge advantage. That right there is what the reason why the biggest companies in the world keep turning over. You look at the top, look at the companies, the top 50 companies in the Fortune 500, and two or three of them are still there. And it's because everyone gets locked into this. I can innovate, but I can't innovate in a way that's going to cannibalize
Right.
my existing bread and butter. If you want to go down the Netflix path a little bit, one of the things that Netflix looks at constantly is what are young people watching and what are young people doing, because they know that is what the core of the market will be doing in a handful of years. Are there people right now who have gone wet, gone fully wet, I guess is the term?
Yes, there are. I would say like a smaller portion of the society goes fully wet, and gets rid of the dry. But when you talk about young people, these kids are using baby wipes and then they're starting to use like the dude wipes of sorts, like at like 3 years old and like potty training and stuff. And we are starting to see a lot of those kids be like, I don't want the toilet paper, like I've never even used that stuff. And so that's really interesting to us, like this very young generation who's like coming up on wipes. And they're really like they're enjoying the routine and they're like, give me my dude wipes.
Because it's just a way of seeing the future. I mean, if you have a certain
Yeah.
percentage of your audience who's using these, and little by little you go, they've given up the other one entirely, or it's just a sense you're onto something. But let's go into something a little bit differently that I thought was really, I won't say unique, but unusual, which is that you've gotten to be a $200 million company and you have not raised any money other than your Shark Tank money. That
Yeah.
was unbelievable. And my question was that a strategy? Was that just we never felt the need? Where did that come from? How did that come about that you said we're just going to go it alone?
Kind of a mix of like before Cuban, we were in business for a couple years and we were trying to raise a seed round from anybody, pitching hundreds of angels and all of those things and just nothing. So then we kind of had this early on realization, all right, we just got to put our heads down, turnover inventory, just grow this thing. And, that was like $100,000 a year to a $250,000 a year, like small numbers, but stacking them up. And then, Mark came in as like our seed first investor. So that was some nice A, money early on, B, Shark Tank notoriety. We started taking off a little bit. And then we started making a couple $1,000,000 a year. And that's when there was, okay, people interested. Hey, you guys looking to do another round? You need the capital. And, as guys who had never been given a big check, we were like, well, there's a lot of things we could do with that check. But Mark gave us some good advice on if what you're doing is working and you're growing organically, what do you need the money for? And we could never really succinctly answer that question. And he's like, if it's to get opinions of experts, so say, a CPG VC is going to invest and give you these opinions. He's like, wouldn't you be better off hiring a consultant to solve X problem that you don't know? And so we started doing a lot of that. Like, hey, we don't know this growth pain in front of us. Let's hire a consultant from the outside, come in. And there's just a lot less emotions involved with that, right? Paying somebody $100,000 to just like drill you, tear you a new one, tell you what's working, tell you what's not, and then they're on off doing their next thing. And so we kind of got in a little groove like that. The banks started to get behind us, so a lot of asset-based lending with local banks in Chicago, and we kind of realized it was an inventory game, and that people would lend us money for inventory. And then we ran a lean operation for a long time until we hit some scale. And then we started bringing on people. So it was a little bit of like, no one would give us money. And then, Mark was giving us some good advice on like, well, don't just go chase money right now. And then it just became very hard to justify selling equity for money once we learned the game a little bit,
Yeah, because you're right. There's two pieces to it. There's the sense that we're not going to chase trying to get money, but there's always this temptation that just think how much more rapidly we could grow if we could invest this way or begin to invest forward. And it takes this discipline to say that when you take people's money, it comes with these responsibilities that you also you may not want, and it certainly gives you a lot of flexibility. So we've alluded to it, but of course, I think one of your breakthrough moments was getting onto Shark Tank, and I think Mark gave you $300,000 for 25% of the business. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's what it was on the show. We ended up selling like 20% of the business for 225. So same valuation. Just a little less equity.
So still big chunk of equity, which I'm gathering Mark is feeling pretty damn good about right now that he got 20% of a company which is doing $200 million a year, and which
I'm sure how it goes. We're one of those portfolio makers. You make a bunch of bets, and then hey, one of them took off like a bat out of hell.
It's fantastic. And the other reason, listen, and this is perhaps a little bit of an unsung thing. Not only are you a portfolio maker, but he hasn't been diluted.
Right.
I mean, except for perhaps stock option and things like that. But in other words, his 20% is probably still reasonably close to 20%. So he's got to be happy. There's the rumors that, not rumors, but the reputation is that he's actually unbelievably helpful. Have you found that to be true?
For sure. I mean, he's unbelievably like responsive, and also he's entrepreneur first. So you could obviously take money from a VC firm who wants to be out in 5 years and stuff, and like nothing personal against them. They're not going to necessarily be entrepreneur first. It's going to be like, I have this money, it needs to come out. And they're sort of giving you advice from that lens. Mark is giving you advice like, if I was in your seat, guys, I got plenty of money. If I was in your seat, here's how I'd be looking at it. So it's like, it's a real genuine sort of spot that he's in. And then he's just seen companies, we were $1 million a year when he invested in us. Like, he's seen companies at $1 million, 10 million, 50, 100, like, so he can kind of help you understand what problems you might run into. Just a good spokesman for the business too, shares a lot of things through his celebrity about Dudewipes. So yeah, I think the only thing maybe people don't understand about sharks is like a shark also can't, call up Walmart and be like, put Dudewipes on the shelf, or like, there's certain things that the big retailers and just the consumer speaks at the end of the day. Like that product has to move, in its position. So but like any investor, you're not asking them to operate your business. You're asking them to give you advice, be in your corner, help you for the long term.
Yeah, my opinion about him has really changed over the years because years ago when his name first kind of came up, I went, oh, he just got lucky. He did what it was broadcast.com and sold it for $1 billion
Yeah.
and kind of a random thing. But actually, ever since I've met many, many, many people who he's done investments in through Shark Tank, and universally they go, it's crazy. You call him, he answers. You text him, he gets back to you. It's like he's just unbelievably accessible, and I've got to give someone props for doing that. Was getting on the show a strategy, or was it a random occurrence?
Say it was a manifestation of a dream, right? Like you would watch the show before you even started the company. Oh man, that's so cool. One day I'd love to get on that show. And then kept applying. So, the third year we applied, we got on. But there obviously was strategy behind it. Like, hey, wouldn't it be great to get a partner? Wouldn't it be great to get all those eyeballs, get the commercial aspect of it? So it's a win-win situation for an entrepreneur to get on the show. And we definitely looked at it like that. Like, hey, we got nothing to lose. And it's not a huge time suck to try and get on. You got to fill out an application once a year and send it in, and then, go through some interviews and stuff. But it doesn't prevent you from running your business as long as you don't distract you or something.
Well, it certainly turned out well. And I would agree that almost everybody that I know that's been on the show said it was a win-win, that just getting the promotional boost from it was worth the time and effort. Well,
Yeah.
let's change subjects for a second. So I don't know whether you know, I was really involved with a brand called Chubbies. The guys who made the shorts.
Yeah, I know some of those guys.
Yeah, and yeah, I was. I met them when they were still in their garage, basically.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Worked with them all the way through until we sold that brand. But it's a lot of similarities. I mean, number one, this started basically in a dorm room. In their case, maybe it was the year after college, but still close enough. Also began with this irreverent sense of humor, very social media forward, and interestingly enough, 4 co-founders. And I'm wondering, there's 4 co-founders. Are they all still active?
3 of us are still active, and one moved on to other things like 3 years ago or so.
And from the beginning, did you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities, or were you all just kind of like equals, or how did you sort that out? Because that's a big source of tension
Yeah.
in startups.
I mean, I always tell people, look for the complementary skills. So like, don't get 3 creative guys together as co-founders. So, we were at least smart enough to notice that. And like, as I was like looking for people who wanted to, join and get this going, it was like, okay, very clear. Let's get a guy who knows money and who knows numbers, and get a guy who knows sales and knows marketing. And in the beginning, I won't lie though, like there's not a lot of numbers to count. There's not a lot of operations to run. So I think you want to set it up like that. But it took a while to come to fruition where people were in their own lanes. Because in the beginning, everyone's just hustling and dipping into all categories. And then, so I think the challenge is just making sure, guys, we set out with this intention. Now, as we grow, hey, like I don't need to chip in sales anymore. You go develop that side of the business. I don't need to chip in marketing, like I used to be involved a lot more in marketing. And then, my partner, who was always the marketing guy, then it was like, okay, this is your baby. I'll obviously continue to be a sounding board and in your corner, but now you're building your team. You're the CMO, you're doing that stuff. So yeah, the complementary skills and then just growing into them.
Were you CEO from the beginning? Pardon me, CE? I'll leave it at that.
CED. Yeah, I was CED from the beginning. That was the first title on the first website. I was like, well, chief executive dude, so.
So, but from the beginning, you were the head person, and that was pretty much agreed upon.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I
yeah,
just see so many companies that start that way, and I'll put Chubby's in that same category, where basically we're all going to be we're going to run the company together. We're equals. And every time I see that, I go, that's just people who are afraid to make the decision right now. And the longer you wait, it ends up leading to some very, very painful questions.
yeah. You need some order. You know what I mean? For things to work well, for sure.
So before I go to my next question, I want to shout out to the audience here that if you have questions for Sean or for me or for both of us, we will, in the second half of whatever this is, we're going to go to your questions. So take a moment, pop them in the comments, and we will get to them. So if you have a question, don't be shy. Go ahead and ask it. So from the beginning, there you are. You must be what, in your early 20s, 21, 22, something like that?
No,
When you started?
we were actually post-college guys in an apartment.
Ah,
So we weren't dorm room. So what was I, probably like 27 or something when the
oh,
company.
you were a geezer.
Yeah, for
But
sure. A late bloomer, dude.
but you hadn't been a CE of any type before that, correct?
No, I had been a lowly salesman at a construction management company, just kind of doing the 9 to 5 thing.
So and so you mentioned you had high price consultants coming in and out, but what was your path to figuring this CEO stuff out?
I mean, I'm still figuring the CEO stuff out for sure. And so as you're kind of leading more people, I think that's when, CEO becomes more important. Early on, I was more of a salesman, right? And I had to concentrate on figuring out Amazon and getting into e-commerce. Like, I think for me, CEO, and I was, the only full-time employee for 2 years, like it just meant doing everything. And then figuring out what moved the needle. And okay, this is where I need to spend my time. And then CEO changed into, I used the like player coach thing, like you're Michael Jordan for a little bit, like
Yeah.
you're making all the calls, closing all the deals, doing everything, hands are on the keyboard. And then you got to turn into Phil Jackson and like sit from the outside and get the right people in the right places and stuff. So like that's been more of my journey from, CEO of like a garage startup, to CEO of a $200 million company sort of deal.
So now that I've got the age bracket in perspective here, so you're pushing 40 if you're not already broken it.
Yeah, I'm pushing it. I'm not there yet. So I'm 39.
So is it still come as naturally to make the poop jokes, and or are you finding that you're starting to age out of your category?
Yeah, it's funny. I was joking this with one of my other co-founders. Like back in the day, if you would have told me I was going to turn 40 and still be running Dudewipes, I would have said, you're fucking crazy. Like that'll never work. Yes, a 40-year-old isn't as old as I thought it was, when I was in my late 20s, or that's what I like to tell myself now. But I will say about the poop jokes is they're ageless. Like little kids love them, grandpas love them. Like that's one thing we found with the whole Dudewipes thing is like everyone likes a good poop joke. Have I gotten tired of them? No, and I think that's just like gratitude, enjoying where you're at, enjoying what you're doing. And I always say if I stop having fun with it, I'm done with it. So
Yeah.
if for some reason this isn't fun to me anymore, it's grown big enough. There's plenty of CEOs to pull in this seat and continue to grow this thing. And so I would never want to hold on to like my position or my role if a younger guy needs to come in or an older guy needs to come in, so that's kind of my barometer. Is like if I'm having fun, let's keep going. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah, it's a great barometer. I think, and it should never stop. You should always be having fun what you're doing. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just that, for example, in a CPG company like yours, uh, there's this requirement almost to have this intuitive sense of who your customer is and what they resonate with. And again, I know this from working with the Chubbies guys, is that, they started out and they were very much a fratty type of brand.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the humor was very fratty, and that whole attitude is about the weekend and going drinking and playing golf with your friends.
Right,
And
right.
then years go by and years go by, and all of a sudden, these guys are all married and they've got little kids and they got the houses out in the suburbs,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's feeling like a bit more of a stretch and they really had to work very carefully. But how do you maintain that sense of that you're really connecting with your customer?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're like, "I'm getting old. Am I gonna start doing lame stuff to affect this brand?" sort of deal, you know? I would say, like, yeah, as much as we love the Chubbies brand, once we were very fratty early on when we were online only, and then once we started getting into, like, brick and mortar, like, the brand did sort of expand out, and, like, families were buying it and women were buying it, and, like, so we understood that this brand, like, needs to be fun, but not necessarily, like, as targeted as, like, a college brand or something like that. So that's kind of a way that the brand has evolved. But yeah, we you don't want to have the ego where you evolve it into like your tastes either. You want to look at like where it's developing, how people are perceiving it, and like feed it there. So I think if you're able to put like kind of the ego aside and really understand like what your brand means to people, you can feed it in the right way, you know?
So it's an interesting kind of segue into channels in a way, because when you're a complete D2C company, you basically have a direct relationship with every single one of your customers. They're coming directly to you to buy it. They're
Yeah.
getting your messaging off of the website. You can reach out to them. It must be a lot harder when all of a sudden you're selling to a distributor who's now moving it out to a grocery store or to another store, and you're a little bit detached from your customers. Do you have like techniques that you use to kind of make sure you have a finger on the pulse?
Yeah, I mean, surveys are big for us. Social media is big for us. But I really do like surveys because like a lot of your people, once you go omni-channel, they're not following you on social media. They're not on your email list. Like they're not part of these die-hard core dudes, which we love. We understand those dudes very well. And so, we use tools like Numerator and stuff like that to run very broad national surveys. What do you think of this brand? Why do you buy it? What are these different emotional points it gives you? And so just refreshing that data is like, because that's what we care about, the omni-channel consumer. Because that's just we're toilet paper, right? Like we have to kind of be broad like that. Where I think every category is different. I think apparel you can get a little bit more personal, and you should be, but like consumables, you have to realize not everyone's buying you because they love your brand. They're buying you because they have a job to be done, and for us, they got an ass to be cleaned, and we want to be cognizant of that, like all along the way.
So I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion that there was a number of things that were fairly different about your approach. One, of course, was the no fundraising. But another one is that you started out selling Dudewipes, and you're still selling Dudewipes.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
brand extensions, no acquisitions, no Dude orange juice.
Right, right. Dude seltzers.
What's that all about? Dude seltzers. What's that all about?
Well, there is some failed line extensions in our history. And those were like early on, like we were like a $10 million company and naturally sort of being like, well, this is a brand that resonates with dudes. Shouldn't we make a deodorant? Shouldn't we make a soap? Like, why not? Like, why not build this platform? And very early on, we realized that that was like detracting from the capital. We weren't capitalized like a company to do that. So that was a mistake from a capital perspective. From an energy perspective, now you're spending energy trying to do different things instead of like inch wide, mile deep sort of strategy. And then I started reading a lot. Like, are you familiar with like Al Reese, Jack Trout?
Yep.
I started reading a lot of their books, and it was kind of like this. Most people don't do well doing this, you know. Coca-Cola tried to make energy drink and it failed. Red Bull tried to make a cola and it failed. Like, people really do well growing their brand. Your brand becomes synonymous with your category. And then so I kind of came to a mindset, and I never want to act like the mindset I have now is like the same one I'm going to have in 5 years. But like, if your category has a bunch of runway, you're best served growing your brand and becoming a king. I think if you feel like your category is tapped out and you have so much market share, it's time to like extend. Those are beautiful ideas, but I see a lot of small entrepreneurs who have no business line extending because they're so early, and it's the shiny object syndrome. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So the failed lessons were very important for us to galvanize. Like, there's nothing wrong with the day one apartment idea. Let's just keep scaling it and doing it better.
So you must have some indicators in mind that will tell you when it's time for you to extend, or is it never?
It could be never for the Dudewipes brand. So if you believe brands are inherently tied to their category, it could be like, okay, Dudewipes is $1 billion brand in toilet paper, and like it's just the growth there is kind of petered out. Then you got options, right? Do I take Dudewipes international? And do I go run that same playbook in different markets that I feel like are ready for the wet disruption? Or, you know, you look at like Harry's or something. Do I start creating other brands under my portfolio to go attack other categories? But I'm very protective of grabbing the equity from the category king and trying to do, you know, the Red Bull cola sort of thing. That typically doesn't work well.
So it is interesting. So in other words, in some sense, the indicator for you is when growth dramatically slows, which tells you may have topped out. But even then, maybe the answer is new markets rather than
Right.
extending the brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
You brought up Harry's, but let me
What do
bring
you
up.
think of that, Mark? How do you view brands and categories? Are you as maniacal about it as me, or?
Uh, it's a really interesting question, but listen. I think that you're closer to being right than most people are. As you probably know, I am on a show called Elevator Pitch, which is basically the B-list version of Shark Tank.
Yeah.
So, so I like the sharks do. I hear hundreds of pitches. It is remarkable how many people start out with something which is barely past being a failure and are already extending the line and diluting themselves. So I completely applaud the fact that you've stuck with it. And I think part of the realization you have, probably correctly, is that it is what's the size of the toilet paper category? $100 billion. I mean, it's probably something huge, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In the world. Yeah.
It's massive. And so in one hand, you go, holy crap, $200 million. But in another way, you guys are barely penetrated.
Right.
And it's just similar with the Netflix scenario. People for years are going, why aren't you in international other countries? Exact same reasoning that yours was let's take the effort it takes to get me launched in the UK and get me this return. If I took that exact same effort and just focused it on our core business, we'll get a 10x return. And
Yeah.
you keep doing that until you get to some point where that diminishes. Then you go into Europe, then you go into Australia with English language, then you go international. So very smart.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's opportunities to do mild extensions that may in fact, I shouldn't say. I don't know enough about the category.
Yeah.
In other words, I think you're generally, I think you're right. I think
I
what
will
you've
say,
done is
like, we
very,
have
very
like
smart.
a Dudewipes medicated, so that's like a prep age competitor, but it's still a flushable wipe. It still goes on your ass. It's in a different aisle. It's like technically a different category, but like those are little sneaky things that I'm like, that relates to the brand. I like that, you know.
Yeah, it does. And like you said, it's this is going to, I mean, it's for men. Do women use wet wipes after they crap?
50% of our users are women.
Yeah. So, okay, it's extending that well
Yeah.
by its very nature. But yet, it's called Dudewipes. And so, to what degree would it be diluted if you had a brand which wasn't called Dudewipes? But was not scented with spicy mint or whatever it is, but with
Yeah.
something more feminine. In other words, there's ways to play both sides of it. But I think what you're doing is very smart, and like I said, really unusual. And so I applaud the discipline, and I applaud the fact that it's done so well. One interesting thing that actually affects that, and you brought up Harry's. But I'd flip it over to Dollar Shave Club, who actually did launch a similar product.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. And did that have any impact either on your thinking or on your marketing?
Well, I was scared shitless when they launched it because I was in like my first or second year of business, and they were this like huge company that took off like a bat out of hell. And like very clearly, at least in my opinion, they saw what we were doing and like, that's a great idea. We need to launch that. And then because it's called Dollar Shave Club and you tried to sell a butt wipe, guess what? It didn't work. So it's a completely irrelevant product in our category to this day. And like, I can't believe it still exists almost.
Yeah, I know. That was an amazingly successful company, the Blades part. I mean, it's kind of
right.
They took like subscription and applied it to a non-intuitive. Who would have thought you could make that work?
Yeah.
God, I got so many more interesting questions. Let's jump into marketing just for a minute.
Yeah.
So, again, I was not that familiar with the brand, but it was interesting that a big part of what you're doing looks like it's sponsorships. That you kind of, and one of your specialties is sponsoring people who've shit their pants in public,
right?
And NASCAR. And I don't know whether there's an overlap between those two markets. Don't see much of that when I'm watching
the
F1.
infield, I think, yeah, they probably fall into that category.
One of those cars goes by you at 190 miles an hour, and you're standing too close. That's a shittable moment. So I can see that happening. So, and listen, you even sponsor, what is it? The Dudewipes 250 is like one of the events you sponsor.
Yeah, we did. That was the first time this year that we did like a NASCAR race where it was the Dudewipes race. So that was fun.
So how is this sponsorships a pretty effective strategy, and do you recommend that to people?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to build a brand that means something, it's helpful to be involved in communities where like there's real fans and then you're part of that community. So you can do that through influencers, you can do that through sponsorships, like, and that's where we're like part of the NASCAR community, and they get our jokes and they help retell our jokes and they buy our product at Walmart. And like, so that helps like the quality of your brand and gets you impressions. Like obviously it gets your name out there too. You'll have to do other things. So I always like, people are always looking for the silver bullet on marketing. I'm always like, pretty much have to look at a CPG playbook and do every single one well. Like unfortunately, and for us, sponsorships we're able to do particularly well because there's something interesting to say about our brand. We're letting you talk, like we would talk. We're letting you say things that other brands wouldn't say. We're putting a logo on your ass that says Dudewipes, and that's funny and stuff. So brand is like the ultimate sort of like alpha in that situation. Like for one brand doing one sponsorship versus another brand doing the exact same sponsorship, if you don't have an interesting hook, you're going to fall flat and the other guy's going to really resonate. So that's why like any sort of shit story, news hacking, news jacking, we love that kind of stuff because that's like a memorable moment for our consumer to associate with our brand. And we'll go there. And, the Charmin Bears won't go there. And so we also have to be mindful. We will go these places that the big toilet paper won't. And we can't ever kind of lose that,
And what about the social media? How does that fit into the mix? How important is that one for you?
Organic social media is like, awesome. Like it's where we can be a part of an everyday conversation, saying something fun every day. Like one of the things we like to say is we provide fun, not just wipes. And so you might have saw something on social media that upset you, and then the Dudewipes post is always just supposed to come in and be like, that's goofy, that's funny. So like, I don't know, man, it's just something like we actually like to do every day, and our customers like it too. And besides a couple people on their iPhones, we're not spending really any money on it.
Right.
We're just putting out stuff, which the Chubbies
Yes.
are great at.
Yeah, it's an incredibly powerful tool if you can figure out how to do it well, how to break through, how to be authentic. I
Yeah.
mean, all the things that you guys do, that Chubbies does so well. That for Chubbies, it really made their brand. I mean, that was really their for long time. Content was what made that happen. And it gets a little trickier when you begin going multi-channel, and you're all of a sudden supporting stores and supporting wholesalers, and then it requires a slightly different mix. So let me ask you, I guess maybe a little uncomfortable question. So you recently had a class action suit against you guys.
Yeah.
And I bring it up because it's probably one of those things that was another thing you probably never expected to be dealing with as a CEO. Um, was it as brutal as I would imagine that something like that is?
Well, I really got to give my co-founder and CFO Jeff a shout out, because he's the former banker, risk, insurance guy, and so he just took that fucking whole thing bull by the horns and like negotiated with the lawyers, got in a really good place, got us coverage. Like, he absolutely crushed it. And it was one of those things you kind of don't expect, but then as you're talking to lawyers that deal with them, they're just like, guys, you're at a scale, these things happen, you know, and then so you start to realize they just need to be addressed. And they kind of come with scale and innovating. And so we weren't even the first person in our category to go through this class action. They start at the top. So they started at Cottonelle, and then they moved their way down to the next biggest guy. And so, yeah, it was a little different, and like would kind of like upset you, for a little bit, but it's a growing kind of pain thing that you realize, as I'm sure you've realized, like there's part of the business.
It is. It's one of the things you kind of imagine what problems you're going to be solving as a CEO, and then okay, I got things wired, I got my marketing, got the
Right. Yeah.
product, got the distribution and sales, and then this stuff comes, and you go, oh, I finally can breathe. And then the stuff comes out of left field that you never expected to have to deal with. It completely screws things up. So when I saw that, all I could do was go, oh my God, those poor guys.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always something. So I think that's
Yeah.
like, you got highs and you got lows. And I think you don't want to get too high on the highs, and you don't want to get too low on the lows, like, because this is a long journey we're all on, and you got to kind of like, feel those things, but absorb them, and keep moving in a good spot.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm gonna go to some audience questions in about 2 seconds. I have one more thing, which I don't think anyone else listening is going to care about, but I'm curious about. So I see that you do it. You're on Intro on that platform,
Yeah.
and why? What is that about? I mean, you make 300 or 400 bucks for 15 minutes. Is that a reasonable use of your time? What's the thinking?
Yeah, I think I get a ton of messages, right? And like, you can't respond to all of those people. And so this is like a way to be like, hey, if you really want to talk about something, here it is. And so first of all, when you talk to someone on that platform, they're serious. It's not an idea person. It's someone who's spent that money to talk to somebody for 15 minutes, and like they're ready to chat. And so it's a good way to like talk to people, give back, and also understand that they're serious, because like, you'll have a lot of conversations with people who just aren't ready to have conversations yet, and that's not worth it for anybody. And then actually, interestingly enough, I typically learn something on all of those calls, because I'm talking to a serious entrepreneur who's in their business. They may actually not even be that much earlier than me. Some people are like, I'm doing $80 million. I just got into Walmart. Like, can you give me some tips? Like, I got something to learn from somebody who's doing $80 million, kind of deal. So that's probably been the biggest surprise for me, is that I typically come off those calls being like, okay, that was kind of, interesting.
That's really interesting. I'm glad I asked because what you're saying in some ways is that you want to help. You get probably hundreds of inquiries per month in your email and in your LinkedIn and on and you go, I just need some better way to figure out which ones I answer. I can't answer them all. And this is a great way to let people vote basically on how badly they really want to talk to you.
Yeah, it's an easy filter.
And the learning part, so that's the bonus. Well, pretty cool. Well, I think let's see if we have any good questions in the chat. Hunter, are you there in the background? You're going to pop them up on the screen? You're going to put them in the Google Doc? Oh, there we go. So this question comes in from Jake Stevens from LinkedIn. There's a trend of dudifying products. For example, Dr. Squatch with soap. What other categories do you think are ready to be dudified?
None for me, Jack. I'm going to keep doing the same old shit for a long time until it slows down. Jake, sorry, Jake.
I mean, it's true because listen, you go on Instagram, and it's like how many ads for ball shaving stuff, or can you? It's like everyone now thinks that
these guys just launched a flushable wipe.
There you go.
You know, so like people can continue to bifurcate and go really wide, and that's their prerogative. But it's not for us right now.
But it's kind of the point, which is kind of interesting, is that what these brands do, and which you did, is basically you take things that people may not have wanted to talk about or didn't feel comfortable talking about it, and said, we're just going to talk about it. And it gets people's attention. It breaks through. And I think what a lot of these people are doing is taking that exact same approach.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what the small guys can do. The big guys have lawyers. They have you know what I mean? Like it gets so bureaucratic. They can't really say anything interesting. So us small guys, this is our advantage and we have to stick to it.
That's awesome. All right, cool. now this is from Red J. Looks like that's from YouTube. Yeah. Now that the pair of y'all are successful, well-established founders, you could just retire on a beach somewhere. That in mind, what internally motivates you to keep working hard?
Great question. I mean, you know, I think Mark, me and you are in different places, so you might have a little bit better of a perspective on this one. But I know I wouldn't be fulfilled laying on a beach, so I think that's a big part of it. Like we all kind of like to work, and we like to be working on projects and stuff like that. So that could materialize into something that maybe isn't a much about commerce. It could be like charity or like things like that. But I think once you get into this game and you go through all the stuff in it, the highs and the lows and stuff, you realize that like you enjoy the game, you love the process. And then so getting rid of the process doesn't seem too attractive outside of the money side, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I did a AMA this morning with Entrepreneur Magazine, and they asked a very similar question about kind of what is success. And you know, listen, you're in the Hicks, you're up in Chicago someplace, but you know, here in Silicon Valley, I know hundreds, if not thousands, of people who get to a point economically they could stop, they could go retire on a beach somewhere.
Right.
But why do they want to do that? I mean, starting and growing companies, that's the most incredibly cool, exciting thing you could do. And if you can keep on doing that, why would you want to stop? You know, and in my case,
true.
You know, after Netflix, which was probably the point where it was truly, you know, retire on a beach somewhere if I wanted to, I did take a year to say, what do I want to do? Do I want to go retire on a beach somewhere?
Yeah.
And pretty quickly you go, nah, it's too much fun doing this. And if they're going to keep letting me do it, I'm going to keep doing it. It's the true thing. You know, I think you and I, luckiest guys in the world that get to come to work every day doing how much fun it is to be starting and growing companies.
What did you think of that year? Would you do that again? Was it like necessary, like breathing time to be like, what's next? Or did you feel like it like slowed you down?
No, I am. I messed it up a little bit. So I took the year. I said, okay, I'm not going to start another company. I'm not going to take another job. I'm going to purposely chill. And what happened is I filled up my time with a lot of, I'm going to call it garbage, but I was an advisor to a whole bunch of companies,
Oh God.
yeah, exactly. Which is the most ridiculous thing in the world, where you
I
show up.
refuse to do that, by the way. That's another reason I'm an intro. I'm no advisors, no companies. You could try and offer me equity. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, you show up. You don't really know the context or the history or the product or the competitors, and you shoot from the hip with pattern stuff, and then it's not fulfilling for you. It certainly isn't helpful for the founder. So that was I joined a bunch of nonprofits that people asked me to, and felt no passion for it. And then for me, I got lucky because then I took my whole family and we all moved to Europe and did a year, an expat year, living in a different country. And that was the breakthrough, because then I'd seen what happens when your filter is, oh, is it good? I'll do it. It's not good, I won't do it. And I go, the challenge is there's 1,000 things that are good. And so the trick is picking what you really want from all the other stuff which would be good to do. And built this business plan for myself that I've pretty much followed ever since. So it took 2 opportunities for restarts in my case.
No, that's good advice, to not fill things up when you do that restart. Just let it really be blank and open to develop.
Yeah. Well, when you're ready, Sean, give me a call and I'll give you my more specific tips on the life after startup. And the thing is, I fucked it up again because Looker was which was for me even a bigger outcome than Netflix was. That was inadvertent. That wasn't meant to be. It just happened because I kind of messed up on my discipline of what I was going to do in my post Netflix years. So I can give you plenty of tips. But let's see if we can squeeze one more in here before we wrap this up. Oh, Jesus. Okay, in a zombie apocalypse, what celebrity would you want to be your survival buddy?
Yeah, good question. I mean, if I'm just going for like the cool hangout factor, I feel like it's like a Matthew McConaughey, just a guy who's got a good vibe and a good outlook on life. But there's got to be like a Bear Grylls dude or something if I'm being if I'm being specific about who I want by my side that I would pick too,
Oh, that's exactly right. You got to decide, do I want the person who I'm going to have you spending a lot of time hiding out in some little cave with? I probably would go with a Ryan Reynolds or something like that. But you're right. The thing you really want is someone who's completely unhinged. Or you want a Danny DeVito who you can easily outrun. It's like, anyway, okay.
Patting him up or something,
Anyway, I think we just about hit bottom on that one. What I was originally going to actually congratulate. We talked about these kind of key moments, and like one, of course, was Shark Tank, which kind of accelerated you. And I was all queued up to say the other big key moment was when you won the Vision Award, which was this prestigious 2013 award presented at the Consumer Products Conference for Best Product.
Yeah.
Until I learned that you were up against a stretchable hood and a panty refreshener pad. Then I went, okay, maybe not as impressive as all that.
It's a menopause wipe, I think, but it was from Kimberly Clark. So we beat Kimberly Clark at an awards show with about $10,000 in sales. And I will say it's a wipe award that no one's ever heard of, or a non-wovens award. It gave us a lot of confidence when we shouldn't have had confidence. We didn't belong there. And these people were like, this is the coolest thing of the year. And so it was actually a big deal for us, like from a confidence perspective.
Yeah, you're right. All of a sudden, you recognize this thing that we're doing actually isn't as crazy as everyone thought.
Yeah.
We're appreciated. Well, For what it's worth, the panty refreshener pad, I'm sure, is bankrupt and pulled from the shelves. So it
Absolutely.
all came out in the end. Listen, Sean, in the interest of respecting your time, I'll thank you so much for coming and chatting with us all. Really interesting to talk with someone else who's been down the path as well. And the fact that you did it without raising money, I'm jealous of. That's quite an accomplishment. So thanks again. And thanks to everybody in the audience for joining us. Thanks for your questions. Keep an eye out for future editions of whatever this is. And we'll be back to you soon.
Whatever
Sean,
this is. What a blast. Thanks for having me, Mark. Later, dudes. Thanks for tuning in.
My pleasure.